Hey, good afternoon. I'm finally getting to do something I've been wanting to do for a while. I've been wanting to interview Becky Ajai about the emotional impact of this whole COVID-19 thing and how it's impacting different people. Now, you may know Becky from the amazing live Lelaro shows that she does on Facebook. I know that I've personally gotten into a few of those and made some bogus requests. I think one time I asked you if I could find men's workout clothes in hot pink.
Which I could probably hook you up.
And she could probably find it. But she's also a really gifted counselor, and I'm thankful that she had a little time this afternoon for us to talk about what's going on in our lives and how this quarantine has been impacting us. Becky runs Restoration Place, which is the counseling center we have here at First Baptist Church of Sheridan. And hey, Becky, thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And she loves talking into a microphone.
I'm really not happy about this microphone.
But
Just
it works.
put in the comments that this is awkward and unnecessary for the microphones, so Shane gets that feedback. Thanks.
So Shane, yes. Shane's right behind the camera. He heard everything we just said. So, yeah, thanks so much for doing this. And I think the first thing that we've already talked about a little bit before the camera came on was just the gamut of impact and reactions and the spectrum of effects this is having on people. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, from what you've seen, how you've been talking to people, what are the different reactions people have been having to this time of quarantine that we've been in?
Right, and it is very varied, and I think that all of the experiences, I want to just acknowledge that they are valid, that everyone is experiencing this in no right or wrong way, but that it looks different for everyone. And I think it's really important for us as human beings, one to another, to acknowledge. And when we get into that sort of judgment mode of, well, you're not handling yourself very well, or like, it's great for us. We're bonding as a family, and we're loving this time where we don't have to go out and be, sort of drawn into all of the social events and all of the things that are not really necessary in our lives. So just remembering as we interact with one another that we lead with compassion and curiosity, that I might be very lonely and very bored and be starved for human interaction and depressed. Whereas the working mom, who's now working from home mom, who has now become homeschool mom, who is burning the wick at both ends, extremely booked and busy, and has no time to worry about what's going on in the news, versus the person who does have time to absorb that information and get precautionary and scared, and is, experiencing it in a different way than someone who is maybe, I have some single friends who are loving this time. They're spending time getting fit and reprioritizing their lives and enjoying the downtime and getting out in nature. And I would encourage us all to find those nuggets of things that we can hold on to that are positive, because I haven't read the book in a long time, but I think it's Viktor Frankl who talks about just perspective. When we start trying to control things and get into our heads, well, we only have to do this for 30 days and this is all going to go away. Corona will be over. And I think even our children are in that mindset of, is it over yet? No, I mean, just this morning, Ellie woke up and says, is Corona over? And, we don't serve ourselves well with our thoughts when we start trying to kind of control things in our mind, versus I can control how I wake up this morning, whether I brush my teeth and wash my face. I can control the thoughts that I, put into my head, and try to grab captive those thoughts that are not serving me and find other ones. And we talked earlier about sort of what can you do when you recognize you're sort of spiraling and you're in this COVID storm, or however you want to frame it. And I would challenge you to find more emotionally neutral ways to communicate to yourself about it. Because when we put those negative connotations onto it, that this is, bad and punishment and all, like all of that sort of dark mindset in
The
your
baggage.
yeah,
Yeah, mental
exactly.
baggage.
It's gonna weigh you down and make it even harder for you to find that peace in this storm. And we talked about finding the eye of the storm and how we really can't make that happen externally from us, that it comes from within. And when we are struggling to get that calm within us and be the eye of the storm, because that's all I can control. I can't control whether Corona is going to come to my doorstep or not. I mean, yes, there are things that we can do to be responsible. But on some level, the only thing I can control is my being. And and how do I do that is the question.
So there's a great question. And I'd mentioned earlier that some people will ask me, well, how are you doing with this like quarantine coronavirus thing? And I've thought, well, I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing fine. But then for the past few weeks on Mondays, on my day off, like the day that I'm there to sort of unwind, I've been getting these monster migraine headaches. And I think what I've realized, I'm carrying more stress than I realize that I'm actually carrying through the week.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I have a day off, then it kind of hits me that, man, I've been a lot more stressed than I realized.
Right.
So when you're talking about being grounded, I'm obviously coming at this from a Christian perspective. What could I do maybe better through the week to be grounded, and maybe what would be a physiological factor that could indicate to me that maybe I'm not as grounded as I thought I was?
Yeah. And that is something that will be a continual process, I feel like, for people's entire lives, is to learn how to listen and be still and get sort of all online. So I talk a lot with my clients about the parasympathetic nervous system and your fight or flight response, that we all get in that sympathetic dominance, which is the fight or flight state. Even on a small level, when I get into my truck and drive across town, it's this sort of on guard piece. But do I need to be way on guard? And I think some of the things that sort of creep up on us, just things that our neighbors say, or bits of information that we hear on the radio or the news, things that cause that scale to tip, or the sympathetic nervous system to start notching up more and more and more. And I'm not catching that in the moment to go, oop, my heart rate just increased. All of the things physiologically that your body does to ward off the saber-toothed tiger. It's a temporary thing, right? It's supposed to be, I'm getting into sort of science type stuff, but it's a momentary thing where then where you then come back into parasympathetic dominance. Parasympathetic, the calm state, is where relationship happens. That's where connection, the spirit sort of realm of our soul piece, that's where we really connect. Is those temporary things that are threats, but right now we have this sort of exacerbating thing going on with Corona, and it notches us into that fight or flight state without us recognizing, there's this extra layer of threat, saber-toothed tiger, or whatever you want to call it, that's looming, and we're not recognizing that we're already preset to be a notch higher in fight or flight mode because of this. And so how do I be even that much more mindful of making sure I'm notched down in all of the other things where I'm, getting good sleep, and I'm, not overextending myself, which for me, working 2 jobs, 2 kids, all the things, I'm like, I could preach it, but I mean, it is a continual process, and recognizing even, when you're in sort of anxiety mode, just bringing yourself back down into this moment right here. I will tell people, go get a glass of water, sit with it, feel your hands on the outside of the cup. How warm or cold is that cup? Like literally just bring yourself back into this moment here and feel feel what the chair feels like. I mean, just stop with all of the external noise, worries, things that come in, and just we're going to, really work hard to just bring it right down into this moment and get grounded. And then even if that's just for a minute or two, to just say throughout the day, even if you have to set a timer to do that, just to get back into the eye of the storm, because there is calm and peace and goodness in all of this. We just have to be extra aware that there is this force, that there is this, whether you want to, I'm not from the South where there's tornadoes, so I shouldn't even talk like I know what a tornado is like, but there is this force, there is this corona wind, whatever, that's going on, that I do need to not get sucked out into, but ground myself back into what's most important.
So I think you're bringing up another excellent point here, that so now there's something that's working harder to call my attention away from that moment you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But even when there's not a coronavirus going on, there's still just sort of the day-to-day stuff that may not be as intense, but still makes it difficult to do that. And would you say, so I think Christ did a good job of setting the example to say, you know what, I need time away. Like, I need time
Right.
away from this, everything I'm in right now, I think maybe to do what you're talking about.
Right.
So we have the mom who has the littles, and she's working from home, and she's having to homeschool now.
Right.
So, what might those moments look like? I mean, I think you
Right.
described a great one right there with
And
just a
something
cup of water.
yeah, but just something just popped into my head
Yes.
too, and it's this piece of when there's more dissonance when I have expectation here and then reality here. We need to be somewhere in the middle, because reality, I mean, I am a driven person. I have high expectations, but in this, is it serving me to really expect myself to be, Pinterest mom and a stellar, employee and all of the other things, but it's finding that middle ground. And also, I call them no misses. Like, what are your no misses? What is in alignment with who God made you to be? And I have my words and my things like, attuned, engaged, attentive, like, how do I get out of alignment with that when I start worrying about, oh my gosh, the laundry is not switched over and this stuff is not done, and what are we having for dinner, and how, Luke, sit down, you're going to be late for your YouTube, or your Zoom or whatever, where it's like, okay, why am I holding this expectation of perfection, and how is that not serving me, and how do I really get into that time away, presence, being present, being here, and really focusing on the things that are in alignment with who God made me to be, rather than getting caught up in all of these unrealistic expectations that we hold. So I think that's I call it your baby deer legs. When you're just starting out in this process, you feel really wobbly and it's scary and shaky. And it's like, I am not a homeschool mom and I don't want to do this. But it's like the mama deer nudging you up and saying, no, you're actually going to do this. And that's sort of God saying, we're going to pause everything. We're just going to do something that we've never done before. And we're going to challenge you to stretch those baby deer legs and get stronger at catching yourself out of alignment with who I made you to be, who God made you to be. And the more you do that, the more that muscle memory, you'll remember and you'll go, ooh, irritated, agitated Becky is not who God made me to be. Take a deep breath. What is out of alignment here? Where am I getting out of alignment? What do I really need to be doing right now? Taking, that example of the mom, taking my son's face in my hands and saying, I hear you, I'm here. That's the most important thing. Whether your homework is perfect or we're on time to your Zoom call or whether the dishes are done, it's finding that balance and grace with myself to say, I don't have control, but I can control myself in this moment and work to stay in alignment more than out of alignment with who God made me. We're all human. We're all going to fail at that. And it's awareness. It's the first, like we were talking maybe off camera, I don't know if we caught it, was the first step in healing is awareness of being mindful of, oh, okay, now what? I'm out of alignment. So now what? And it's just that one small step into change that is that small win that gives you that momentum to then muscle memory that, do it faster and better the next time. And you get better at catching yourself when you're in that fight or flight state and going, whoop, take a minute, bring her back in. Where am I getting too pulled out into the storm?
So the alignment piece you're talking about, if I'm looking for indicators of when I'm out of alignment, so that would be like anxiety, stress, it would be maybe excessive anger, or if it feels like it's getting a little out of control, something like that. All factors in. Those are like the lights on the dashboard going off saying, hey, I think
Red
something's
light,
not
ding,
right
ding.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, the more you take this opportunity that's slow down, you have great opportunity in this to really sit with yourself. If you would challenge yourself to tolerate that stillness and really listen to who God is telling you are and showing you those gaps and offering you opportunity to get more in alignment with who it's that I am who you say I am. Like, I know I am not, but that I have to trust you know who I am. And if I sit still, you will reveal that to me, and I will get better at listening to you to come back under that umbrella of your protection and be in alignment with who you made me to be.
So you're hitting some really important stuff here, and I wanted to add. I told you this story earlier. I was waiting for some moment I could work it in here, but how might God be using this moment? And on the one hand, yes, it is nearly impossible for us to know exactly what God is doing. Right? He's a infinite God, and His ways are mysterious. But I heard the best analogy by this pastor. His name's J.D. Greer, talking about a lumberjack who saw a bird up in a tree that he wanted to scare away. He didn't want to just cut down this tree with this bird sitting there. So he believed the loving thing to do would be to hit the tree with a sledgehammer until the bird flew away. So he did that. But then the bird landed in another tree that he was going to cut down. So he had to do it again. And a couple more times, so the bird finally landed on a rock ledge. And the problem, though, was the bird, when it looked back at the lumberjack, didn't see a loving man who was trying to do what was best for the bird. He was just upset that this lumberjack had moved him out of his comfort zone. And might God be using this to get us to a place that maybe we're not as comfortable with, but is more in line, as you're talking about, more in alignment with who He's made us to be?
And we will never know, right? But the thoughts that I think about it don't serve me well. If I think that lumberjack is out to get me and he is mean and angry and wants to hurt me, versus let me, like, that whole neutral piece. Like, let me look at this a little bit more neutral and not so negatively emotionally laden, right? Because that is not going to serve me well. That's going to trigger me into that fight or flight state. But to say, it is what it is. The lumberjack is moving me from tree to cliff. And that is what it is. But when I say, this is not fun, what that does to me in my body and my being and in my, my perspective on things and the way I am, whether I'm in alignment or out of alignment thing again, versus this is challenging and uncomfortable and unknown and I don't know. And when I try to control it, how does that serve me? It doesn't really. It gets me pulled out into the storm of trying to control the storm, which is not mine to own.
And it really has. I think this moment has really removed that veil that we have control. I mean, if it has done nothing else, it has shown us we are not nearly as in control as maybe we had dreamed we were.
Right.
So, yeah.
Which, and I often say to my clients, can I challenge you? Like, yes and no. Sometimes it's like, no, but okay, and how might this, once you do the hard thing, how much that serves you, and you see I can do hard things, and I can be challenged to grow, and how much how it does create this pride and this, like, you've done the hard thing, but when you are, having somebody being drug unwillingly, that's no fun. But you are being drugged. So do you want to do it unwillingly, or do you want to say, help me relinquish control, Lord, and stop lying to myself that somehow I'm going to stop the storm?
Let me cooperate with you in the storm.
Right.
Awesome. Well, thank you for. I know this is. I feel like I've gotten a free counseling session here. So thanks
I
for the
don't know. I
therapy.
could have been all over the place. I hope something made sense and
Yeah,
resonated
yeah.
with you. And please feel free to drop your questions. Maybe we'll have a series where we come back and answer some of those questions. I don't profess to know much, but
You
we're
know
all
more
in
than
this together. And
you know more than most of us, Becky.
I don't know about that. But
Yeah.
we all offer, I think, a perspective, right? We all have a story. And I am honored and humbled that I get to challenge people with how they view their story, because when we tell our story as again, that value laden piece of it, how that can really hinder God's light shining through us and his perspective. I often pray with my clients, help us to see your perspective. I have my perspective, but help me to get into alignment with your perspective on my story. And that is, I'm so thankful for the opportunity to be in a Christian counseling perspective where I can say, we don't know, but somebody else does, because when we try to figure it out, it's usually a big mess. So
We need that objective third party to look in on our lives. Well, thanks again.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking if this was helpful to you, if you would please leave a note in the comments if there's things that you would like for us to talk about with Becky. We could do that. I think we could maybe do this again sometime. And we might even try doing this live, to where you could ask questions live to Becky, and we could get her insight on things. So again, Becky, thank you so much for your
thanks for
time.
having me. This has
All
been
right.
fun.
Awesome. Appreciate
Thanks.
it.